Join UNITEDWESTRIKE.com radio on the second Saturday of every month for our live international radio marathon. Don't buy, don't comply, ask why.
Yeah, this is Detlef here of Wake News Radio, Wake News TV from Switzerland in our United We Strike Radio Marathon. And we are having our special United We Strike Radio Marathons every second Saturday of a month. And I have the privilege to start those strikes here from Switzerland in German. And we are now in the English part of our transmission and broadcast. So I would like to announce that I will be having a guest here with us. And our today's topic is freedom is just another word for spiritual consciousness. Yeah, and you can read about our today's program also on our website, UNITEDWESTRIKE.com. And fact is, we all believe what people, governments, media anchors are telling us, but we do not see that this is all a distraction from what really matters. Our minds have been hijacked a long time ago. Freedom is imprisonment. That's what they are preaching. They are preaching this to us according to the Newspeak from Orwell's novel 1984. So we need to realize, though, that freedom is just another word for spiritual consciousness. Dark spirits, dark forces have misled us to believe only material values do count, but this is exactly the opposite. And I'm very glad I could manage to have Michael here from Switzerland tuned in, and he is sort of trying to discuss this with me together. And if you have any questions or so forth, you can post your question in the chat box, which you will find also on our UNITEDWESTRIKE.com website. Or send us an email to radio@wakenews.net so we can pass on the question to our guest. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, and Michael is very fluent in English because he's been traveling a lot, also in the US and in India, and you've been studying a lot over there. So maybe you can introduce yourself first of all.
Well, my name is Michael, and I grew up partially in San Diego and in Los Angeles. So for me, it isn't easy. It isn't difficult to communicate in English as well. But the subject that we're talking today is a bit difficult. But yeah.
Just go ahead. Yeah, I mean, we've been discussing this already in the first hour in German. We have the problem, or most people have the problem, that they don't understand why tyranny and terror is taking place to the extent they are experiencing. I mean, just look at the world. I mean, there are wars all the time. Although you, as a human, you don't want any war, but governments do believe they have to go into wars. Or just look at the financial system. The financial system is basically draining you down because you are not earning enough to make a good living. So everything gets more expensive. This is such a difficult world to look at. So many people come also to us, to me, and ask me questions. What can I do? I can't even make my living anymore. What may be the reason? What can I change? And I guess we have to understand a little bit more about what is really behind the so-called matrix, as I say, or I like to call it. So and that's why I thought you could give us a little background and insight into what really happened thousands of years ago, which is still valid to the current date.
Right. Basically, you could describe it as reductionism. We have been abducted and hijacked from our own self. And that happened many centuries and many thousand years ago. And when you look in history, like the Incas in South America, they did the most horrible human sacrifices. They were cutting out the heart of living human beings by the hundreds and thousands. And then you have to ask yourself, why did they do that? What was the goal? What was the purpose to do such a ferocious things? So basically, what it amounts to is that always there has been an elite of people that wanted to live on top of other people. They wanted to vampirize the rest of the people. So that's why they made a deal with all the demons and of the world and negative forces to give them the knowledge and the power or the powers to subdue the rest of the population. And knowing that all these demonic forces, they live off the feelings of other human being, especially the feeling of pain and all negative feelings. So they made a deal with these demonic forces that, okay, you provide us with the blood of these human beings and we give you the forces so you can subdue the rest of the population. So that was the basic deal. And so since those times you have this this setup, this unholy setup, basically. And when you look up in the time, that is especially important for America, the time of Toatl, that was sort of a negative initiation center with Toatl. And he was observing also that kind of goal and doing all these atrocities. And then came his counterpart. His name is Huitzilopochtli. And he was a good white initiate that was fighting these negative forces and Toatl, and it was simultaneously taking place the mystery of Golgotha in Palestine. And so therefore, because of the Christ overcome the negative forces and he went into the underworld, so that's why this Huitzilopochtli could also neutralize the forces of Toatl. And knowing that today's political forces, and especially some of the political representatives, I don't want to mention any names, but there is this higher circle of these dark elites. They are basically reincarnated souls of that old inner circle of Toatl, which were fighting against Huitzilopochtli 2,000 years back.
Isn't there the basic idea of creating a parallel universe or parallel society away from the original God-given creation?
Well, Ahriman's ultimate goal is to create a parallel universe. His problem is that he needs energy to run it. So because he is so cut off from the godly forces, he cannot produce his own energy. So he needs energy from human beings because they are equipped with that godly spark that is within them. That is the old prana, that life force. That is that eternal feeling of that eternal energy of God that they want to, what Ahriman wants to abuse and take it and suck it out from the people, like a black hole sucks out all the energy. So in order to build up his parallel universe that is called the Eighth Sphere, Rudolf Steiner talks about that for people that are more interested. He needs our energy to build up this new cosmic setup.
And we discussed this earlier in the German part. So the setup of the New World Order, which was propagated first officially, at least I've heard this through Bush, the Bush Senior, former president of the U.S., who was promoting this new world order as the big idea. This is actually a step towards building this alternative or this second universe, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not a precursor model, so to speak, to get to this eighth sphere. Basically, yes, that's correct. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we try to also, we have to sort of explain the background, the historic or science background which you have into practical words, so people can see what the developments are and how they relate to all these ancient stories, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. When we look back in our history, in our different cultural epochs that were there in the past, we had the Roman Greek epoch, then we had the Egypto-Chaldean epoch, the Babylonian, the Persian, and the Indian epoch. When we go back long enough in history, and when we go back even further, we have the Atlantean times and the Lemurian times. But overall, when we look at the consciousness of man and of mankind as a whole, we saw that going like a wide stretch through that whole our epoch of times, human beings were always aware, and they always had a connection to the spiritual world, and they were an active part of it. They could perceive spiritual beings. They could see angels. They could have a direct relationship with God. And so since the 14th century, that is quite new when you would take into respect, when you would think about all these past times that were there, then you see that only since the 14th, 15th century, with the time of Galileo and Kepler, we have a kind of reductionism that only thinks the human being as basically a homo economicus. That means a being which is only consuming, which is only reduced to matter, like a piece of meat that also can think and do weigh, measure, and count, and that's all. And that's quite a reduction when you think that in earlier times human beings were aware that they had a connection with the gods, with the angels, with the whole the stars, with the being that are behind the stars, that they could see them, perceive, communicate with them. And when you think what a lousy existence is today, with our reduced consciousness as being reduced to a piece of meat that can sort of intellectually think. And a lot of people, they know that's not it. Something is missing. And of course, these Ahrimanic beings, I have to explain Ahriman in the Bible, and in the Bible they're explained as the devil and Satan. And there is kind of it's not clearly defined. Once they say Ahriman, once they say Satan, once they say Lucifer, but they're actually two different beings. So Ahriman is the condensing being that wants to sclerotically condense all matter, and Lucifer is more the one that wants to not deal about this earth, that they want to withdraw only spiritual, to have basically Lucifer is the carrier of all the arts, the originator of arts, of music, of visual arts, etc. And these two beings are being kept in balance by the Christ, which says, okay, we need these forces, we need the condensing forces for our bones, and we need the flowing forces, the gassy forces for our blood. So all these forces should be at their proper place. And the Christ is telling them where to go, and it puts it in a harmonious whole, so to speak.
And this is out of balance. That's the problem.
Today it is out of balance because, as I mentioned, the so-called reductionism that took place that reduces us only to the material aspects of our body. It's basically a body consciousness, and that is quite a loss compared to our cosmic identity, which we as a human being have and inherited it from God. And it serves Ahriman because he wants to abduct us further and use our forces, and use us in particular as a sort of like as a junkyard to pull out the pieces he can use, the energy he can use, and use as a battery to run his universe, his new creation, the so-called eighth sphere.
Now, all the humans, us, we are basically victims. We are falling victim to this strategy of Ahriman or Satan, whatever you want to call it. And now we are serving the beast, so to say. Some unwillingly, some have become conscious to the fact that this is the case. And we try to practically suggest what you can do in order to regain the real freedom. But first of all, you need to become conscious. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's very important. That these Ahrimanic forces, they have an agenda, and also the people that are behind it, the so-called Freemasons or Illuminati or however you want to call them, the Tenebristi in Latin, the dark men. They want to serve Ahriman's agenda to create this to further the chasm which is created between this godly plan of creation and the goals of Ahriman. And unfortunately, all the structures that are laid out today in our common life and by governments, they follow that negative agenda. So in our social structures, there are these negative agendas which make us to think in those patterns, and these patterns tend to keep us in prison unless, and that is the good point, we question them, and unless we have a good soul activity that says, hey, wait a minute, something is missing here, and how can I get in touch with it? And everybody, I think God looks specifically that the people that really want to make the connection in that sense, they are being fostered, and they're being it is made possible that these beings get help from the positive spiritual world, so they can reestablish that kind of intrinsic connection.
Yeah. So basically, most people feel that something's wrong, but by receiving all the negative influences by chemtrails and what have you, the fluoride waters and all the other poison in food and so forth, and all the brainwashing through matrix media, mass media, and the politicians and so forth, you are being distracted from finding the right way and to gather enough force in order to make this very important step, which is necessary in order to proceed in your development. Now, obviously, we are looking for sort of examples or propositions for people who are asking, what can I do? And could you explain your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, they have to really listen to their consciousness and listen to their inner voice that everybody has, and try, and on the other hand, question the outer forces, the outer circumstances that government the infrastructure that these people set up. And basically, we have to be quite clear that these infrastructures, I call it the infrastructure of evil. That means governments, the way they organize themselves, the people and the forces that stand behind governments, they don't want common prosperity. They don't want people to thrive in this cosmic positive spiritual manner. They want to help this negative agenda. And what they can do, first of all, to study all this ancient knowledge. They have been mystery school in this world, and this ancient knowledge is available to everybody that is interested. They can study the old Indian ways of initiation, the mystery schools. They can study Rudolf Steiner and his works when he talks about that we can reconnect to that knowledge, and they have to be aware who they really are. What does it mean to be a human being? It is not reductionism as a piece of meat that thinks. And that's what these banksters and gangsters want us to believe. They want to put that illusion in front of us, and they say that's what you have to believe. And that happened with, as I mentioned it, since the 14th and 15th century, with this materialistic world outlook, which was introduced by Kepler and Galileo, that did away all this tradition, this spiritual tradition that we had, that we are a cosmic being, you know, and same with the reincarnation, reincarnation, that also this that was done away with 560 or 570 AD, when Justinian, that empire, that Roman Empire, and his wife Theodora, she was a power striving and a power sick person that wanted to be acknowledged as God, and the thought of incarnation and reincarnation was in her way, because if she was to incarnate again, then she couldn't be worshipped as a god, because gods don't reincarnate. So that is the story why this has done away with. And the same thing with the biblical tradition. A lot of what is in the Bible has been manipulated, and things that has been taken up into the canon of the biblical works that was not useful for these priests, especially Justinian and further on priests in that row. They didn't keep it in. And the St. Peter's evangelic didn't come inside. A lot of apocryphic literature didn't come inside because it was bothersome for the people in power and their agenda. So they just kept it out. But when you're aware of it, then you question, well, wait a minute, why did they put it out? And I want to read this, and I want to have my own opinion on this issue, and I want to make myself smart about such things. That is a first step. Further on, of course, we know that we have to transform ourselves. And if you want to regain a religious access, religious means a reconnection to our cosmic forces. And it's not like sentimental Christianity where you say, oh, praise the Lord Jesus Christ, and we have the autopilot on, and that autopilot will bring us to paradise. That is also a hallucination of the real situation. Basically, they believe in an illusion of Christ, and a hallucination, basically, of Christ. That's what it is. Because you have to actively participate and to train your inner organs, or in Indian way, you say chakras. You have to train them with visualizations, with certain kind of exercises of your thoughts, with thought meditation, with feeling meditation, that you spread the lights through your eyes, through your arms, and so forth and so forth. That goes too far now to explain all the different methods of meditation. But everybody can look into that, and they know that they have to meditate and to really done a progress of transformation, which they have to initiate. And if you're willing, if you really do that, then godly forces and positive spiritual forces, the Christ, that will help you along that path, so that you can really take active part, not a passive part with the autopilot, and say, oh, praise the Lord Jesus Christ, and the autopilot's on, and he'll bring me like in a train ride back to paradise. That doesn't work. So But the positive forces, they help you. And of course, your dream life as a result will change. You will have to start inner experiences and visions that guide you along that way. And that is basically nothing else that the teachings of the ancient mysteries are brought to modern attention. But as I said, the Ahrimanic forces don't like that because that threatens their power. So they do everything in their might to subdue it, to put it down, or to do away with it, whatever comes closer to them. So one has to be aware of that situation, and they use all kind of trickery business to reach their goal.
Now, this ancient knowledge basically has been kept in secret societies like Freemasons or Illuminati or whoever, and the top grades definitely know what's going on. So they also know that there's a dark agenda behind what they are doing, because those usually are in top positions everywhere or are controlling those top positions. So everything what like a guy like Obama or Merkel in Germany does is controlled by dark forces. Could one say that?
Yes, everybody that's part of the structures like governments and all kind of that institutions, they are part of the dark agenda, because otherwise they would tell people about all this ancient wisdom and ancient knowledge which is there, and it would propagate it, and they would make it accessible to everybody, which of course they don't.
Yeah, this is in order to fulfill the basic ideas of Ahriman or Satan to set up their own empire, their own second universe or parallel universe, which is only serving them, not us.
Yeah,
correct?
That's exactly, that's nothing but slavery, and in that way, there's the free will of the individual will be cut. You have no more will. It's a collective consciousness. You can function like a machine. It's basically machine consciousness, if you want to simplify it. It's machine consciousness. You have no individual possibility to express your freedom. Freedom is abolished, basically. There is no more freedom. It's off and on, it's left or right, it's up or down. That's finished. You have no more.
Yeah. So in order to, let's say, get out of this parallel universe, which is basically will kill us in the end, or will, enslave us completely, we have to take action. And we have to be conscious that this is the plan, and we have to take action and so forth, that we are doing this individually. And if we all do this individually, we will be collective, active. What is your opinion to that?
Well, as I said, we have to really, I think within the structures that today's society is composed out of, I think we have no chance. You must really get together again, and people that have spiritual aspirations, they should form like small units, small oases of spiritual life, where they live together, they work together, and they cut themselves off of all that money structures, of all these government structures, and they organize their life, their contemporary life, quite different. So without that, I think it cannot work.
So there's basically no way to survive in the system which currently controls us.
Exactly.
But that basically means that whatever we try in order to restore, current structures, I mean, for instance, going to vote for somebody, like in the US, there's a presidential campaign to elect the new president of the current system. That is not going to bring us any further. Is that? As an example, over here in Europe, we have the same thing.
It's only a big show. Basically, it's Hollywood. It's a part to keep these people in illusion, and to keep in that illusionary state that they can change and partake into the changes of our society. They're not worth anything, and in the eyes of such people that basically rule in the negative, dark sense, people, they don't count. They don't even exist for them. They're a chunk of a piece of wood, or not even that. So they don't consider them, and they don't want prosperity for everybody. They want only their prosperity. They're like vampires. They simply want to suck out the people for their luxury, and later throw them on the ditch. Basically, that is their attitude to
Sure. But, we have several religions. We have several initiatives like patriotism, nationalism, what have you. So there are certain ideas, and people are working towards those, let's get back to the real America, or let's get back to the real Germany. But is this the right way, or should we completely withdraw from everything which we've exercised so far?
Well, that's worshipping the old bloodstreams. In olden times, all these race kind of issues, they were maybe important to get our independence in a certain way. But now they're no more. They became decadent, because one has to believe, as everybody, all humankind is one people, so to speak. We're all one, and we're all striving towards cosmic knowledge. And where our body forms or body models basically come from, that's secondary or even less. But what really counts is our intentions and our consciousness. So that's why the Christ says, he was then reminded once, I think there was a meeting there, and it said, your mother is there. Your mother and your brothers is there. Then he said, who is my mother? Who is my brother? My brothers and mother and my is the people of the same spirit. These are my relatives, So we should not look where people come from, but what their aspirations are, and what they think and how they think, and what their models of life, what kind of model of life they have. That's important. So that old, basically biologically grouping the people, that's a thing of the past.
I mean, in the Bible, there's written in the New Testament that even within a family, people will turn against each other, even kids against parents and parents against kids. So doesn't this sort of express exactly that it is not the family anymore, which is your closest being, but it is basically like-minded people? Because you experience this. I mean, I experience this, that family members don't understand you, your waking up or your consciousness or your point of view to the system and so forth. They're even fighting against you. They're neglecting you. So it is. It shows that not families anymore the closest you can get.
Well, it's a matter of consciousness. It's a matter of consciousness. Of course, when you have family members, that of course you communicate with them and talk to them and explain the whole situation to them, and maybe they are able to follow to a certain degree. But it can happen that somebody is so possessed by these outer energies, that the structures that surround us, that they cannot take it up. That's part of Ahriman. He's trying to emotionally lock all the critique that one has of the contemporary life structures. He wants to block it out, and he doesn't want to even take a look at it. And that is the dangerous point, because if people they refuse to look at their feet and look and analyze the ground that they're standing upon, then it becomes dangerous. That's where the whole thing of manipulation sets in, the whole deception, what these Ahrimanic beings are trying to do. It's nothing else than a big Ahrimanic deception that we're living in.
Yeah, which is hard to understand for someone who has not received a certain level of understanding or consciousness, and they are still following those leaders in brackets or in parentheses, rather, like Obama, who says, he's promising change. Certainly he has changed a lot, but to the worse even, or following the agenda of Satan, if you want to. But, that is very, and I'm always looking for ways to explain ordinary people what they can do, what they should do in order to support us in reaching, this new way which is necessary in order to get out of the mess.
Well, I mean, everybody that has a bit of a clean vision of the situation knows that all these politicians are actors. And I happen to know Obama in Hawaii. I saw him and I looked into the eyes when I was in 1981. I was there in the exit hall of the airport. He was employed as a security officer there. And I looked in his eyes, and for a long time, for about 1 or 2 minutes, I was late for my plane. And then I had the thought, he is going to be an important person. He can be a president of the United States in the future. And we were laughing at each other. But then I could perceive that that he might be falling prey to these negative forces. That made me sad that time. But I had to, stop that kind of connection that I had to him, because we didn't talk a word. It was only visually. And so I had to take my plane back to LA. But that time it was quite clear to me that these are all actors. And everybody that has that clean consciousness, that will find out that they're just part of the deception. They're all employed actors, and they get a lot of money and other things,
other perks, yeah,
and
other, yeah. Well, that is an important issue, because we are now in the midst of this presidential campaign in the U.S. And if you have a look at Trump, for instance, one of the actors, which is which is very much loved by those who have the hope that the U.S., the America, as they were used to experiences, might come back with choosing Trump as a president. They will be very much disappointed, because Trump definitely will have the same agenda, don't you think?
Yeah, they're all employed by the same boss, basically, and the boss is these secret societies, and they have their agenda, and they come like different colors of sweets. One is blue, one is yellow, but they're all coming from the same company. They're all chocolate inside.
Never trust a billionaire, isn't it?
You can think, when you think about what he says that he will increase torture, and what else he said? I think
he withdrew this sort of because he had too much. But anyways, I mean, what they are saying doesn't necessarily mean that what they are doing in the end, isn't it? Also a difference between saying and doing.
Yeah. But I mean, to really think, he says he will not only do waterboarding, he will increase it to a medieval kind of state. In that direction went his. I think he made an announcement, or in one interview he mentioned something like that. And I said clearly, I mean, somebody that has spiritual insight and that is really a spiritual person would not even, touch that words. He wouldn't even think about such a situation.
Yeah, so it's another illusion where many people will fall for it, unfortunately, and will believe that there will be change. It's the same thing here in Europe. I mean, we have elections here and there as well, and people are falling for those who are expressing their opposition to what's currently going on. But if you look behind the curtain, it's basically the same story, just in a different color.
Exactly. I mean, the system is not there to serve the
humans,
human beings and the humans
yeah.
as a whole. It is only there to fulfill the elite's agenda.
So we have to withdraw from the system. We can use the system where it is helping us, right?
Yeah, that is true. But it's only in segments of the system we can use, not the system itself. Only segments of it we might be able to use. But basically, that is not the solution. The solution is really close that shop and open a new shop. And that means we have to do away with all these political structures, governments and such. We don't need any governments. We need cooperation. We need, as a living human beings, you have to get together and say, what do we need for our living? Then we produce it. We say we need so and so many clothes, then we produce them. And we don't need money and all this nonsense. We know what our demands are. We can meet our demands. And the rest of the time, we can use for our spiritual thriving. We can meditate. We can do a lot of things. We can create a new community. We are not in opposition of anybody, but we are in cooperation with the rest of the people. We have empathy towards other living human beings. We partake in their thriving, and that's a wonderful feeling. We are
and towards nature as well. I mean, there have been very crimes like hell. I mean, just look at Fukushima and similar things. I mean, they are destroying nature, everywhere.
Yeah, that's that wrong paradigm, the Homo economicus, because that is that wrong paradigm which everybody follows. We are not there to follow those paradigms. These are artificially superimposed paradigms which we have to get rid of.
Yeah.
And we have to come up, as I mentioned before, cooperation, empathy towards each other, and helping each other. And, we can all partake in each other's prosperity and feel happy about it, and be kind of a brotherly and sisterly kind of society where everybody can prosper. There is room for everybody. And we don't need this profit-oriented world, which always needs a victim. We don't need any victims. We need cooperation.
Right. I mean, we have quite a few developments over here in Europe. There are groups who are building sort of small village-type living scenario, and I think that is a way. I mean, you explained this to us early on, that we have to found groups or establish groups who are sort of spiritually conscious people who are working together and just do that as examples, and this might spread. I mean, if it is a successful example, it could spread to other people as well. Is that a way?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. These new oases of new life structures, where we are not in competition with each other, but as I say, in empathy and cooperation. It means basically to replace competition with cooperation, and not only in a material sense, but also to reconnect with our Creator's hereditary plans that has been passed down to us, that we take it back up, and that we fulfill actually our human goal. That is that we can transform this earth and put it eventually and hopefully into the higher vibrations, and maybe eventually create a new sun from this earth. Then, of course, we fulfill our destiny, which God has planned for us, basically.
So that means withdrawing from the current system, and that actually meets our slogan here at United We Strike, as we are saying: don't buy, don't comply, and ask why. So don't buy with all the corporations, the artificial manufacturing and the preparation of ready to eat meals and so forth, and don't comply is just don't follow the rules. They are basically just system rules, and just help the system but not yourselves, and ask why. So always ask, why are you doing this, and why do we have to follow you, and why am I supposed to do this, and so forth. So
Right.
that is a method to slowly get more independent from the system, isn't it?
Right, that's the first step, but we really have to organize new communities and new social models. Like, for instance, Rudolf Steiner mentioned it in this threefold social order, where it has to be an independent spiritual life, an independent economic life, and a social structured life, which is all that spiritual one is the guideline for everybody, the guideline for economy, the guideline for other social organization, basically.
But there will be a reaction by the system, don't you think? I mean, they will try to prevent this from happening. So
well, they can put salt in the soup. That's the only thing they can.
Yeah, but they may try to force us to abolish the setup of such social groups and so forth, don't you think?
Well, if a considerable amount of people get together, it would be difficult to do that. They have to take down their mask. The mask of they have to expose themselves as really tyrannical if they want to do that really. And when you expose yourself as being a tyrant, then I think people are reluctant to accept your authority.
Yeah, I mean, that's currently happening. I mean, just look at the Bundy Ranch thing, where they keep people who've done really nothing, in prison, and, try to force upon them because they were trying to expose tyranny. And that's people are recognizing that something's going completely wrong. So this is the first step. Yeah, but it hurts. I mean, it is not a comfortable way, is it?
Yeah, that's sad. That whole Bundy situation there in Oregon, that was a really sad story. But I think it was a little bit premature. It happened prematurely. I think if that goes on, and if it becomes like a model, I think people would accept it. More and more people would oppose these kind of activities, and I think that was a wake-up call for them. I think the next time it does not come to that situation, I think, anymore.
Yeah.
Basically, it caught them. Without they didn't properly know what to do at that time. But we need small scale industry. Like Gandhi has had a model for India. When we lived in that communities together, we need a small scale industry. Community like in the Middle Ages, they formed itself where they have the blacksmith, and they had local small scale industry there, and more people can come in as settler. That was also the development of the West, that kind of situation, how it started originally.
Yes.
So that people live in that community, they bring in their faculties. They have the same spiritual aspirations. They want to live in cooperation and not in opposition to the rest of the population. And this competition model will have to die, because competition means that you get something at the cost that somebody else has to pay the price.
Absolutely.
And that is a very evil. That is an evil model. I think we can live and foster each other and get things for the common benefit of all, and that is much a nicer idea than the
Michael,
model of.
Thank you so much, because we are at the end of our part of the show. And we will now go into a break and hand over to Matt Navarro, who's going to have the next section in our English-speaking part of the United Strike Radio Marathon. So thank you very much, Michael. And if anybody has questions, you can turn to radio@wakenews.net and send us your questions to Michael if you have any further, because you don't have any website currently available. But I can pass it on. All right. Thank you, Michael. I have to shut this short here and hand over to Matt and to the audience. Thanks for listening. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to UnitedWeStrike.com radio. Don't buy, don't comply. Ask why. UnitedWeStrike.com radio.